Welcome back to the PeopleFirst Global Summit. Next, I'm very excited to welcome our next speaker, Scott McInnes. He's a founder of Inspiring Change and host of the Building Better Cultures podcast. Do check it out. Scott is also our long-standing awards judge, and we are very grateful for his time, dedication, and the expertise he shared with us over the years. Scott will present Strengthening Connection to Drive Performance, where he will explore how organizations can strengthen the sense of connection with their employees in the evolving workplace. Please join me in welcoming Scott.
Hello. How's it going?
It's going well. It's been it's been a while now, but yeah.
There is nothing quite like a 30-second countdown timer to put you on edge, by the way, just so you know how that feels from a speaker perspective.
The pressure is rising with each count. That's definitely the case. Yes, but I'm glad that you're here, and we can't wait to hear all about what you've got to say and share with us today. So, without further ado, welcome.
Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Marta. Appreciate that. So as Marta said, my name is Scott McInnes. I am Dublin-based, and I run an organization called Inspiring Change. We are all about one thing and one thing only, and that is helping our clients to build brilliant cultures that people want to join and won't want to leave. We do that by focusing specifically on organizational culture change and employee communications and leadership. Mandatory gratuitous credentials page. So we've worked with some big brands in Ireland and in the UK, some of the biggest being the Police Service of Northern Ireland, Enterprise Ireland, the Football Association of Ireland, VHI, who'd be the Irish equivalent of Bupa, and a number of other organizations too. And we love the work that we do because it makes a real difference in the organizations that we work with. I've been musing for ages about this thing buzzing around in my head, connection, this idea of connection and our connection to each other and our work and our colleagues. And I've got a theory that how we work today is eroding the sense of connection between our teams, our people, and our organizations. And I wanted to spend a little time maybe teasing that out, looking at what some of the issues are, what some of the impact is, and then bring you through a bit of a framework that we've created that might point you towards some practical things that you can do to start thinking about how you rebuild connection with people in your organization. I don't think the problem is new. And actually, like many challenges in the workplace, whether that be leadership, whether it be culture, whether it be engagement, I think what the pandemic did was really amplify the issue. And that was amplifying it. If you were good, it kind of got better. But if you were bad, it kind of really showed up your gaps. It really showed up the challenges in organizations where culture was poor, or engagement was poor, or leadership or communications was poor. It got worse because we weren't all in the same building together. When you think about the cost of that, it's not just the money cost. I was doing a bit of digging around, and I've got some burning platform stats for you. Harvard Business Review did a piece of research, and loneliness in terms of turnover and productivity, when they did their research, was costing about 3.5 billion euros a year to UK companies. But it's not just the financial cost, of course, it's the people cost as well. And that same study found that lonely employees are more likely to quit their jobs. They're likely to have higher stress levels. They are 2 to 3 times more likely to miss work due to illness. Gallup went on in research of theirs to say that disconnected teams experience 59% more turnover and 41% more absenteeism, which of course is a huge contributor to that cost to businesses. Conversely, employees in environments where they feel connected are 2 to 3 times more likely to say their job inspires them to innovate and come up with new ideas. And of course, that's something that we look to our employees for all the time. The US Surgeon General Advisory in 2022 highlighted that a lack of connection can increase the risk of burnout and mental health issues. Gallup similarly reported that workers who lack connection with their teams are twice as likely to experience workplace stress and burnout. So it's not good for companies, and it's not good for the people that work in those companies. It's a huge challenge. And we mentioned a couple of the challenges there, the increasing loneliness and the impact on mental health. But of course, there's also the impact on the culture in an organization. From what we are seeing, many organizations are struggling with hybrid working and remote working because we still see culture as being a building, a place to come to, and we're just not very good at working out how do we build the culture that we want in our organization when people aren't necessarily in the business all the time, aren't in the building together all the time like we were pre-2020. Of course, there's a huge challenge with less collaboration happening because we're not actively making it happen. Challenges with team dynamics because we're not all in the same place at the same time. And of course, the ongoing stress of tech. And over the past few days, I've been doing lots of focus groups with a client, and everybody being late to everything appears to have become part of the long COVID pandemic because we're back to back on Teams calls these days. You don't get time to pop to the loo, to have a cup of tea, to have a sit down, to breathe. And that's a huge challenge, a really, really big challenge for organizations. I ran in the Great Scottish Run about 3 weeks ago, which reminds me of a joke. How do you know that somebody ran a half marathon? Because they keep telling you. The palpable sense of energy that comes from being within a group of people with a single-minded purpose, all going the same direction, all supporting each other, there for each other, there with 30,000 stories and 30,000 reasons for being is palpable. It's incredible the joy that you got from the sense of connection of being with those 30,000 people. And similarly, you know, when we were at concerts, that was the Killers in Dublin back in June, and then Noah Khan in Belfast in July with my 16-year-old daughter. I can attest to the fact that 16-year-old girls, there was about 47,000 of them in that field, can't sing. They shout the lyrics, or certainly the lyrics they think they know, but they're not great singers. But the energy there, the positivity, the friendliness was unbelievable. Everybody was just having a good time. And that sense of togetherness was incredibly, incredibly powerful. When I think about what connection means, there are hundreds of definitions of the word connection. And there was one that I particularly liked, which was the idea of recognizing and valuing the humanity in others, fostering a sense of community and building relationships built on trust, respect, and care. And for me, those things are incredibly powerful and incredibly potent, and often things that, whilst we talk about them in the context of work, trust, respect, and care, often aren't there. They aren't baked into our culture. And I know that, you know, we talk about values and values being the epitome, the foundation stones of culture. And often we work with clients where they'll say to us, well, you know, we think that we should have trust in as one of our values. And my response to that is, but isn't trust something that's built up from you living your values? Isn't trust an output or an outcome of you living the values you have in your organization? So the idea of connection to me is incredibly strong. But for some people, the Zulu tribe in South Africa, they have a term which can be summarized as Ubuntu. And I'd never heard this before I had Dr. Jerry Gould on the podcast that Marta kindly mentioned earlier on, and we might stick a link to that in the chat. We chatted about Ubuntu. Jerry is based in South Africa. He is a doctor down there, and it roughly translates into I am because we are. It's an idea or an old African philosophy that follows the idea that a person is a person through other people. We only exist because of the people around us, and together we are a community. And for the Zulu tribe, it's a building block of their society. That belief that togetherness is so powerful that we'll actually give it a name, that we actually talk about it in that way. So If you think about the power of connection and you think about the challenge of where we are perhaps today, not in all organizations, but in some, what do we have to start thinking about? Well, for me, if we can improve connection, what's that going to lead to? I think improved and increased employee engagement. I think improved employee experience, which of course leads directly to an improved customer experience, which continues to build performance of your organizations. So focusing on this idea of connection isn't a nice, fluffy thing, which often gets thrown to HR to look after. It's almost a business imperative that if we want to grow with the performance of our businesses, we have to look after our people better, and we have to get to a place where they start to feel connected as individuals to each other, to their work, and to the organizations that they work for. For me, it's absolutely critical. Question is, how do you do that? So we did a bit of soul searching, a bit of navel gazing, a bit of thinking, and came up with this idea, this framework of the 6 C's of connection. 6 things that as organizations you might want to start thinking about more if you're thinking about them already, or start thinking about them if you're not thinking about them already. That said, there's nothing here that's brand new, and often it's just a case of pulling that stuff back up again and showing it back to people and saying, it's still here. You've got to still keep thinking about this because it's not fixed. And even when you do think one element of this model is fixed, the context you're working in has changed. So actually, you've got to go back around the houses again and refocus. Let's look at each of the 6 C's. I'll go through them one at a time. The first one is cause. And for years, we've been talking about purpose and purpose-led organizations. And of course, Simon Sinek has the bag on that one with Start With Why. But yes, for us, cause, yes, it talks to purpose, the wider purpose of the organization, but it can be smaller than that. It can be a cause that your team is following, a project that you have to deliver, something you're working on together to get over the line, something that together you'll deliver to make a difference for the organization that you work for and the customers or clients that you work with. So that idea of, I guess, a bigger reason for being, as Simon Sinek might put it, is incredibly powerful. What's the second one? It's something that I believe organizations have really struggled with during the pandemic, and since then, as we've moved into hybrid working, and that's communication. So not just the day-to-day communication of what it is we're doing today, what it is we're doing next week, the avalanche of emails that you're getting, or perhaps the Teams messages or the messages on WorkVivo or Workplace or whatever your secret sauce in your organization is. But actually, bigger than that, being really clear about the organizational strategy is critical. Communicating that to people in a way that gets them not just here, but here as well. And actually, probably more importantly, gets them here, because we know that it's those messages that go to our hearts that are the ones that truly motivate us. Yes, we get the numbers and the KPIs and the pillars and all that stuff in our heads that makes sense, but actually it's our heart that motivates us. So being really clear about strategy and explaining that in a very, very human way can help make sure that we're very clearly aligned around where it is we're going as an organization. We feel connected to something bigger than just ourselves or our team. Of course, finding and sharing stories really helps to drive that sense of connection and really helps to bring communication up and really brings that heart to what it is we're talking to employees about. And we want to make sure that we share experiences. And of course, it's those experiences, that alignment to overall strategy that contributes to trust in organizations. I can see where we're going as an organization. I can see through the stories that my colleagues are all pulling that same direction. And therefore, I'm going to pull that same direction too, because I feel part and connected to that bigger idea, that bigger organization. The third one is collaboration. And we need to create opportunities for people to work together. And that's not just about projects. about helping Jim and John and Sally and Bob in their performance management say, well, you need to go and work with other departments in the organization. So go and do a 3-month secondment with HR, try and get together a cross-functional team to solve this problem. Yes, it's partly that, but it's also about how we work together. I don't think we've quite nailed how we work together. And I believe it's why there's such a backlash when it comes to hybrid working and organizations suggesting that they want to have people back in the office for a day or 2 or 3 a week, which, by the way, I don't think is a bad thing. I quite support the idea of anchor days. I also support the idea of hybrid working because I think they can both live side by side very comfortably. I think that what we're not very good at doing is setting a team rhythm. What are we going to do on those days when we come in? What's the work, therefore, that I'm going to do on the days when I'm not in the office? Because that's work that I can do on my own. That's quiet work like writing or making phone calls. Because if I'm not putting that level of thought into the work that I'm doing, then I'm going to end up in the office on an Anchor Wednesday, stuck in a booth for 7 hours doing phone calls, which makes absolutely no sense whatsoever because I can do those at home. And what's that going to do? It's going to piss me off because I've had to come in on a Wednesday because it's an anchor day. And it's going to piss my colleagues off because they're saying, well, what was the point of you coming in when all you're doing is sitting in a booth, doing phone calls or doing quiet work? So we need to make sure that people spend a little more time thinking more widely about how we work together. Because hybrid working isn't just, are you working in the office or working at home? It's also about what work you're doing, when you're doing it, and who you're doing it with. So if we can think more about how we work together, more about collaboration, what does that do? Well, it allows us to get the most from and give the most to each other, in turn strengthening that sense of connection, which can be very quickly eroded if all we ever do is come into the office and do the stuff, the one-to-one stuff that we need to get done. We need to start thinking differently. Fourth, a sense of community. We need to start creating more opportunities socially and work-wise to build relationships and shared experiences between our people. And it's those shared experiences in organizations that will create a really true sense of belonging. And those shared experiences that make me feel part of something bigger, that bring me the joy of being with people, the Great Scottish Run on a much smaller scale. So we have to think about that. Now that has to work for both parties because, we don't want employees having to travel into town just for a social engagement on a day when maybe we're working at home. And equally, we need to think about what people want in organizations when it comes to building that sense of community. Maybe it's things done during the working day, because it seems to me in my experience since COVID that there is less things happening in the evening. There are less social things happening in organizations, and the opportunity to have those connections with our colleagues are kind of diminishing, and they exist only in the world of work. So what can we do to start to think about how can we build that sense of community? Our fifth C is contribution, or recognition, if you like, recognizing the success and, really importantly, the failures that we have in work. Because even when we fail at something, we're still contributing. We're still contributing, learning, and looking at different ways of doing things. So how can we help to really bring people's contributions to life? How can we help them to really bring those into the organization? How do we celebrate when people have done a really, really good job? Not only so that we can learn from what they've done, but so that they know the difference that they're making, so that they can feel that sense of connection to the work because they've been given a pat on the back, an award, a standing ovation in a team meeting, or whatever it might be. And the last one is care. And I remember that I was chatting to a colleague a few years ago, and he said to me, well, what are your values? And I said, well, I'm going to treat people the way I'd like to be treated, the golden rule. And he said, why would anybody want to be treated the way that you want to be treated? Surely they want to be treated the way they want to be treated, which actually is the platinum rule. Treat people the way they want to be treated, caring for them, looking out for them, empathizing, looking for opportunities to talk, making sure that they understand that they are cared for as part of your organizational fabric. And I think those 6 elements of cause, of communication, of collaboration, of community contribution and care. If you can focus on those areas, that will be a game changer in terms of building stronger connections with your people. Will it happen overnight? No. You might try some things and they won't work. So you backtrack, you learn, and you try something else. You go out and you speak to your people to ask them what they want. How are they feeling? Do they feel connected to the organization? Is it having an impact on their work? And you find out what they want to do to rebuild connection with work. Because we're in this place at the moment, I think, where there's a whole narrative, particularly in the media, particularly around hybrid working, and it's a pull, a tug of war between organizations and individuals. The organizations want people back, and the individuals are resisting. I don't think it's that at all. I think it's a conversation that needs to happen, and I think connection is at the very heart, or if it isn't, should be at the very heart of that conversation. I went on to ChatGPT and I got into DALL-E and I said, give me a picture of "It Takes Three to Tango." And it came up with this, which isn't a bad effort, it has to be said. That was its first go. So it takes three to tango. I think that people will very quickly point a finger at organizations to say that, well, the responsibility for creating connection in the organization is the organization's responsibility. And actually, I don't believe that. I think there are actually three groups of people that we need to think about. There are three bodies. There are the organization, yes, absolutely, because they set the tone, they set the direction, they set the guidelines, they set the policy and the procedures, and actually they have a certain level of control over people within the organization. Yes, there's a role for people leaders, because effectively that level of connection, really, probably most of it happens at team level. Certainly if you go back to some of the stats that Gallup throw around, they've said for years that 70% of engagement happens at team level. Only 30% happens at organizational level. And I suspect it's probably similar here, if not higher, actually, than 70% of connection happening at team level. So people leaders have a really, really important part to play in bringing that sense of connection to their teams. And the third group might be a surprising one, employees. It's really easy for people to say, I'm not going to bother going to that. I'm not going to bother getting involved. I'm going to just keep doing the work that I do wherever I am. It doesn't matter that I'm in the office. I'm going to still do my calls. I'm not going to control my diary. I'm not going to change how I work. There is an onus on employees as well to think about what they do, when they do it, and how they do it, so that we can build that sense of connection with our colleagues. Perhaps it is a pain in the neck to pop into town for a night out, and it's easy to stay at home on the couch, but is that the right thing to do? I don't know. I'm not saying it is, and I'm not saying it isn't, but I'm just wondering if more people actually said, you know what, sod it, I'm going to go in and meet my colleagues and have a bit of crack and have a bit of fun. Might that build a stronger sense of connection? I wanted to finish with this, which is a bit of a challenge back to you watching, I guess, which is this. Hand on heart, of those 6 C's of connection, how many can you tick today? How many can you tick and say, we're doing a really, really good job in that area? And if the answer is all of them, chapeau, well done. Great, keep going. If the answer is none of them, you've got a job to do. And if the answer is some of them, just keep going. And by the way, if you need help, give us a ring and we can give you a hand. But it is worthwhile thinking about and reflecting on that idea of how connected, I wonder, do our employees feel to their work, their teams, and their organizations. I guess the bottom line is this. If nothing changes, nothing changes. We can carry on doing what we're doing. We can carry on letting people do what they do. A little bit like culture, every organization has a sense of connection, a way that people feel connected. And we can either leave that to chance, a bit like our culture, we can leave that to chance, or we can choose to do something proactive about it, to be more deliberate around the idea that we need to create a stronger sense of connection with our people and start to think about a plan that will help us get from A to B. If nothing changes, nothing changes. We mentioned the podcast earlier on, Building Better Cultures. You'll find it wherever you listen to your podcasts. Have a look for Jerry Gould He was a really, really good guest, and we had a great conversation, and he'll tell you a little bit more about Ubuntu. There are plenty of, all the podcasts are on our website, along with a bit more about what we do, and a lot of blogs, which explore lots of different areas of employee engagement, or organizational culture, of employee communications and leadership. And if you've got any questions, please do get in touch. But for now, with 3 minutes to go, I will say thank you and have a great afternoon.
Thank you, Scott. If you want to stay for a quick chat, that would be great.
Cool.
Well, great presentation. And I love how aligned we are, because we also had Dr. Jerry Gill joining us earlier, earlier this morning. Hours ago. From
it feels like a year ago now.
Yes. And he's also been sharing some great, the Ubuntu and leadership with the heart. So that's some great message out there. So yeah, definitely alignment all the way there. One thing that really stood out from your presentation was about the finding the team's rhythm. And like lots of people out there need a bit of structure, like myself. I find that I work best at structure. I'm the most productive when it's there. So lots of people will struggle if that structure is not there, especially with like hybrid work. I think it's important for organizations to take that in account, not, for those people as well. What's your advice for the organizations to try and preserve that and strike the right balance between, good connection, disconnection, and ensuring that those people are included in that as well?
I think you gave the answer in your question when you said included. And I think the answer is we get down, we speak to our teams, and we say, let's try and work out how best we can use our time together, because it's an effort for us to get here. If you live in London, you might be 2 hours traveling to get to the office on one of your anchor days. So let's realize that we've made a real investment in getting to the office for these 2 anchor days of 8 hours combined travel time. How can we best use those hours? What's the kind of stuff that we can be doing when we're all together that we don't need to be doing when we are apart? So, my one-to-one calls, my quiet time, my writing, all of that type of kind of quiet work, that can be done on Monday, Tuesday, and Friday. But our Wednesday, Thursday days in the office, that's much more about getting together, running focus groups, having our team lunch, doing our one-to-ones, having our team meeting other colleagues in the business. And I think sitting down with a team, and actually I was only out with Meta this morning talking about change, and we were talking about team charters. So organizations, why don't you just have a team charter? Give your leaders a bit of a few slides of a deck and a team charter to sit down with their people, with their 10 people on their team, to agree their ways of working. What's going to work for our team? Because what works for one team will not be the same as what works for another team. So it can't be mandated from the top of the organization. It needs to be a discussion at team level so that each team can find the place that works for them.
What a great piece of advice to finish this insightful talk. Thank you so much, Scott, for today and for your time. And we're going to go straight to the next speaker. So thank you so much again for sharing your knowledge.
Great stuff. Thanks, Marta. Thanks, everyone. Take care and have a good afternoon.
Thank you.